The burning of the Library of Alexandria destroyed hundreds of thousands of scrolls. The accumulated knowledge of the ancient world turned to ash. But suppose the fires were put out. Suppose the timeline reversed, and those scrolls remained intact. Alongside poetry and philosophy, the library contained blueprints for mechanical power. We are looking at schematics for a steam-driven engine drafted in the 1st century. Welcome to the Paradox Archives. Today, we are opening a door to an alternate reality where Europe never experiences a dark age. Humanity spent the next millennium rebuilding concepts like trigonometry and ballistics that were already solved and stored in Alexandria. Without the library, progress didn't just stop, it regressed. Looking at this historic coastal infrastructure, we can anchor ourselves in the starting point of our alternate timeline. Here, Alexandria remains a thriving center of global trade and uninterrupted research. This animation demonstrates the allolipile, a rudimentary steam turbine. Steam escapes from 2 nozzles, spinning a central sphere. Hero of Alexandria built this novelty, but with continuous funding, it scales up into a massive industrial power source. This stone aqueduct represents the peak of passive Roman engineering, but by the year 300 AD, Roman engineers pivot to active locomotion. Instead of relying on gravity to move water, they use steam to move iron, laying railways across the empire. Rapidly industrializing a continent requires an enormous, reliable workforce. Mass disease becomes the next major obstacle to overcome. Because the medical texts of Galen and Hippocrates are constantly preserved and updated, Roman physicians discover germ theory around 500 AD. They implement sterile practices and quarantine protocols, stopping the Black Death centuries before it can emerge. Mastering steam power and surviving ancient plagues turns the Roman Empire into a rapidly expanding industrial juggernaut with a booming population. This stylized map illustrates the immediate geographic consequence. An exploding, industrialized population quickly burns through the resources of the Mediterranean basin, forcing aggressive expansion. In our reality, the year 800 AD saw humanity fighting with broadswords in the mud, largely isolated from the rest of the globe. In the Roman timeline, however, that exact same year features a massive naval fleet crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Roman shipwrights retrofit traditional wooden galleons with thick steel armor plating and towering steam-powered smokestacks. This creates a total technological mismatch. A unified, steam-powered superpower arrives on the Americas' shores and begins rapid colonization 7 centuries before Christopher Columbus. The same steam-powered rail and telegraph networks that move their legions also allow for near-instant administrative control over vast distances. This prevents the internal fragmentation that ended our version of the Roman Empire, creating a unified global authority. As the horizon of Earth is conquered, the focus shifts upward. The library's works on magnetism and optics lead to the discovery of electricity. Only decades after the steam engine, by the year 1200, the first vacuum tubes are in production, accelerating the development of computing and liquid fuel rocketry centuries ahead of schedule. This is the NASA Mission Control Room in our reality. It required the combined industrial might of the 20th century to put humans into space. While our ancestors were living through the early Renaissance, painting frescoes and experimenting with the printing press, the inhabitants of this alternate timeline were stepping onto the moon. Look at this iconic image from our timeline. Now, imagine this exact achievement, but the astronaut is wearing a heavy brass and leather spacesuit, planting the golden eagle of Rome into the lunar dust. We live in the timeline of the ashes. A single fire robbed us of these milestones. But would an unbroken chain of knowledge have actually created a utopia? Or would we have simply invented weapons of mass destruction 1,000 years early? Tell me your theory in the comments below, and subscribe to keep exploring the archives.